Brah, I'm glad that shift was over. Tang Ina can't believe we gotta head back in 12 hours. Can't take any more night shifts. It's killing me. Migs brah, relax. It's hardly the night shift. It's midnight. Yo, be glad we get to go home. Marcy, Ting, Lim, those poor fucks just clocked in. Anthony glanced over at the whiteboard with a handwritten menu. Meal A. Bistec and rice. Meal B. Pancit canton with hot dogs. Meal C. Menudo rice plus 1 lumpia. Special. Beef pears, beef stew. Yo, so what you having? My turn to buy. Yeah, it's always your turn to buy when we end up at a cheap diner like this. Okay, you get your own. Joke lang relax. I'll have the special. Sorry, been a long shift. Manong, dalawang special ho, 2 specials please. The old man behind the carinderia finished ringing up the customer that was ahead of Miguel and Anthony. Another shift worker, a woman in scrubs heading home from a long shift at the hospital. The old man walked over to the back wall, grabbed 2 plates, 2 bowls and began filling in the order for 2 specials, which consisted of a plate of white rice and a bowl of oily pears, beef stew, street vendor style. Miguel and Anthony frequented Robinson's almost every night shift. It was a bare-bones type of carinderia with green tile walls and San Miguel beer poster ads. One wall had a large corner-to-corner mirror that made the place look bigger than what it actually was. The tables were cheap foldable picnic tables draped with thick see-through plastic. The front windows were ceiling to floor like most of the restaurants on the strip, except for some reason, they were tinted. Food was also cheap, but portions were big. Taste was another story. To the pair of them, the food tasted alright. There were definitely other options in the vicinity. A lot of restaurants and diners in the area stayed open late to feed the influx of commuting shift workers in the neighborhood. Some even stayed open 24 hours to capitalize on the breakfast crowd coming in from a graveyard shift. Miguel and Anthony certainly weren't lacking in options, but something about the food kept them coming back. There was a certain flavor to the ulam which, oddly enough, energized them a little bit. They had the feeling of life returning to their tired, overworked bodies. Over the months, both of them had certainly tried checking out the other carinderias, but they never had the sense of satiety that they would get from Robinson's. Satiety was the word they could best describe their end-of-meal feeling. It wasn't a satisfying meal, but it did leave a particular taste at the end. The kind that makes you want more regardless of how full up you felt. They couldn't quite put their finger on what that flavor in the food was, that strange but tasty flavor. Some of the dishes that Manong served tasted plain, even bland, but with a hint of that something. It was strongest whenever Manong had a special for the day. His specials were random and there was no way of knowing when he'd have a special dish prepared. You just had to be there at the right time. For tired shift workers like Miguel and Anthony, they never really put too much thought into why they liked the food. They just did, but at the same time they didn't. And like most people in their situation, they just decided to brush it off as routine, habit, perhaps a familiarity of the homeland. Manong, who served them, was not Robinson. No one knew who Robinson was. Just like every other store on the strip named Aleng Rosa, Merritt's Bakery, Tito Lydia's Panderia. Rosa, Merritt's, Lydia, Robinson, all could have just been names pulled out of a hat, and whoever worked at the establishments didn't think too much of the history of the store names or who they were. To everyone on the strip, work was work, and a business was a business. Manong was just Manong. He was an old sinewy man with a lazy eye and white oily hair. Old as he looked, he moved like someone half his age. He would float between the front carinderia and the back kitchen like a silent wraith, oftentimes carrying refills of food trays with ease. "Brah, so did you hear about Marcia's aunt? Titan Neng?" Miguel asked as they sat down at their table, positioned across from the television that played local Filipino news. "Yeah, dude, that's rough," Anthony replied as he drizzled spicy vinegar over his beef stew. "Thank God they're insured, right? Dude, what's wrong with you? That shit was fucked up. In broad daylight too. Like, great they can afford the hospital, but she didn't have to be in that situation, you know? It's not like she got hit by a car or nothing. Dude went savage on her, for no reason." "Yeah," Anthony reflected. "That was fucked up. Things are getting bad. I mean, used to be hard just getting around at night. Who knows who you'll run into? But Tang Ina, man, these fuckers attacking us during the day now. And for what fucking reason?" Miguel began to chomp down on his food a little bit faster now. "They hated us from before, pair. But back then they ignored us. Shit talk here, shit talk there, but that's all it was, shit talk. They left us alone. We kept to our side of the line. But now they full on hate us. They blaming us for talking jobs, bringing the fucking virus. Dude, doesn't matter if you're Chinese, Viet, Filipino. We all look the same to them. Fuck this world, brother." Anthony felt himself getting worked up. He realized if he kept going like this, it would be hard for him to sleep later. He decided to steer the conversation back to Titan Neng and Marcia. No point in getting worked up so late. "So how's Marcia anyway? She okay?" "Yeah, she's with Titan Neng. She'll be there a while till Neng's out. Probably be a few days to a week, seeing how that asshole got her." "Wow, a week? How'd she score a whole week off?" "I dunno, brah, but company told her take as much time as she needed to take care of her aunt. I never asked though if it was paid. Who knows? You know, if this shit never made the news, they probably wouldn't have given any time off at all, you know. These fuckers won't give a damn until all of the sudden there's a camera on them." Anthony choked a little bit. "Fuck, that's true. They only care if people got eyes on them. Imagine, if this news didn't go public, they probably would have wiped their hands and said not their problem." Miguel grabbed the vinegar from Anthony's side of the table and started adding more to his broth. He was getting a little heated up as well, but wasn't sure if it was the topic of conversation or the food giving him a second wind. "Brah, the pears is good today," he mumbled. Anthony nodded in agreement. "There's a donation going on if you wanna contribute. Again, we don't know if Marcia's getting time off with pay, but everyone's just assuming she isn't. Hard to ask with her being in her state, taking care of Neng at the hospital. So we just gonna collect some stuff, food, cash, you know. Help with the rent and all. Anthony nodded as he looked up at the television. It was a repeat news story of Titan Neng's encounter. Melinda Torres, a 58-year-old Filipino shift worker who was assaulted while walking home in the morning, is now recovering at St. Joseph's Hospital. Police have surveilled CCTV footage of the incident. Police investigators have identified the attacker as Anthony King, 42, who is now facing charges of a hate crime on top of assault and battery. Anthony King is still at large, and police are urging anyone with information of his whereabouts to contact them or Crime Stoppers. "Fucked up," Miguel says as he turned over to yell at Manong, "Be careful when you go out. You never know what these fucks will do these days. They're just hating on all of us, but what's worse is they hitting the old ones like you, and Titan Neng over there." Manong just stared at the TV, with the same blank look he had every night, and all day for all they knew. He stood there silently, stoically, with his one lazy eye unblinking, unfazed by either the news report or Miguel's sudden attempt at conversing with him. Miguel, meanwhile, stared at him for a few seconds, then slowly turned back to his food. Anthony replied, "You'd think he'd be a bit concerned for himself I mean, even though he's got kababayan, countrymen, all around here, who knows who's walking down these streets these days. Brah, I don't think he leaves this place," Miguel chuckled. "Yeah, I guess you're right. Ingaden mo ang sarol nyo. Watch out for your elves," the both of them suddenly heard from behind the counter. The both of them turned to look back, but Manong just stood there in the same position as always. Sometimes he was watching TV, sometimes he was just sitting down staring at the wall, and sometimes he was at the back, disappeared behind the kitchen, doing what the both of them thought people did behind the kitchen. Cook, chop, clean, or maybe in Manong's case, just a whole lot more staring into nowhere. "You know, I don't think I ever heard him talk," Anthony said. "Nah, don't think so, brah." After a few seconds, he turned back around over to their food and began eating again. "Yo Tun," Miguel whispered, "we've been coming here for months now. I haven't seen anyone else work here except old Manong over there." "Yeah, same, I think he runs this place all on his own." "You mean he does the cooking, cleaning, cash, everything?" "Nah, he's gotta have some help." Anthony thought back and tried to recall how the other businesses in the area operated. There were typically 2 people at least at every store. Even if on a certain hour you'd see 1 person at cash, or 1 person at a desk, there would always be another one out back, or out somewhere doing errands. Running a business, no matter how small on the strip, was never a solo operation. It was possible, Anthony thought, but moving inventory, getting supplies, cleaning the shops, all required some help. And as tight-knit as the community was, there was only ever so much favors one could pull from the neighbors before they start declining. He thought back to when he came to Robinson's during the day and tried to remember if there was anyone else running the shop or if there was help. Him and Miguel usually just came there after their night shifts, but he recalled swinging by a few days on the weekends on his own when he didn't feel like cooking, or he felt he needed something quick and cheap to eat. He couldn't remember at all if old Manong had a helper. Miguel broke his chain of thought. "You know, I heard he was an ex-merc from the Marcos era, Bodyguard or some shit. Where'd you hear that? Anthony snickered. You believe all that Sismus had? Nah man, well, yeah sure, Sismus is Sismus, but you know how rumors go? If it's the same story, it's gotta be true. And everyone's sayin', Manong over there is an ex-merc. Anthony chuckled as he spooned the last bits of saba sauce over his rice. Dude, your logic. Yo, just look at him. Stiff as a board, always looking silent and deadly. You see the dude ever slouch or anything? My titos and shit were all in the army, and you know, posture, it stays with you. Even an ex-soldier can't do things alone man, especially at his age. What? Miguel retorted with a puzzled look. Oh shit yeah, okay hear me out. He's probably like super strong and shit. Ex-merc you know, probably seen stuff. Especially back in those days you know. Fucked up shit. Figures why he'd do things on his own. Probably can't trust nobody. Look at that lazy eye of his too. Probably got stabbed or shot. Tang Inazistic, badass, brother. Dude, you even know what you're talking about? Like Marcos era? You know how long ago that was? Manong over there's probably gotta be over 100 years old to survive the Marcos era. Well, Miguel shouted, but suddenly remembered where he was and who he was talking about, and where that person was. Well, he hushed down. He probably is a 100. Look at him. Migs, I am looking at him, and there's no way. No way pair. I mean yeah, he looks old, but dude moves like he's 20. He can't be that old. The door of Robinson's suddenly opened and the two of them stopped their conversation to have a glance. Normally there's always the quick glance and stare when someone walks through, especially at that time of the night. It would be a mix of curiosity and hopefulness. Curious to see who would be walking in so late at night, and hopeful to see if it was someone they knew so they could start a late-night gossip session. But at this particular moment, the stares gave way to a rapid hint of caution which triggered the two of them to immediately look away and back down on their food. He was a tall, hefty man with big arms, thick thighs, and a big thick belly. He was wide and just plain big. Not the slow and soft kind of big, but the sort of big that can do damage, like a truck or a wild boar. He even grunted a bit as he surveyed the restaurant, eyes meandering Robinson's with a cynical gaze. I thought I smelled something off, the stranger snorted as he slowly walked, more like staggered, to the counter of Robinson's. It wasn't the drunk or high kind of staggering but more so of a bravado step with an air of arrogance behind the walk, leaving behind a strange cloud of hate. What do you gotta eat in this kind of place, Pops? I smell fish heads, you fryin' fish back there. Anthony and Miguel gave each other a cautionary glance. They both knew Manong never served seafood, and they both knew what the stranger meant when he referred to the smell of fish heads. Manong glanced at the customer, with his usual look, unchanging, stoic, emotionless. He took both of his hands and fanned them outward towards the counter of food laid out, the beef stew, fried noodles, and beef steaks. Goddamn old man. Food inspector come by and check your place out yet? What is this shit? You leave this out in the open like this? Probably not even warm. He stared at Manong as he mouthed the word warm. and while doing so he took his index finger and dipped it into the pan of beef stew, stirred it around for 1, 2, 3 seconds, lifted it off and stuck his finger in his mouth. "It's warm, I'll give you that much, but it's fucking disgusting. What the hell is this pig slop?" he spat out onto the floor. Manong just continued to stare. Miguel turned around when he heard the stranger spit on the floor. Something started to boil up inside of him. Anthony sensed this and grabbed him by the forearm. "Pissed, hui, relax lang pair." Miguel turned slowly back to his place, torn and feeling helpless. He knew the stranger with the arrogant walk was up to no good. Miguel just kept getting flashbacks in his head about the news report and his conversations with Marcia about Titaneng in the hospital. What panicked him most among all the ideas and scenarios running through his head was, this was not Anthony King, the suspect that had attacked Titaneng in the streets. This was someone else completely. The feeling of being trapped and helpless choked him. In a hushed tone, as if he could read his thoughts, Anthony whispered, "I know brah, but let's wait. Relax lang. Maybe he'll leave. Maybe he's just all talk. Relax, chill." The stranger sensed movement behind him, looked back with a smirk, then turned his gaze back at Manong. With the same finger that he just licked the stew from, he went and poked at the fried noodles, and began to stir just like he did with the beef stew. Anthony was still holding on to Miguel's forearm, and as he watched the stranger stir at the noodles, his grip got harder, and sweat started to pour down his forehead. "Y'all come here, serve this shit," the stranger talked as he continued to stir the noodles with his finger. "And don't even have the decency to greet your customers. Where's the service, old man?" His finger pushed deeper into the pan of fried noodles, submerging his knuckles, his palms, then his whole fist. "You just gonna stare at me, old guy? Or you gonna serve me? Or do I gotta serve myself?" Manong broke his stare, calmly turned around, and grabbed a plate from the back counter, hardly unfazed by the stranger's words and actions. He turned back around with the plate, grabbed a serving spoon and began to spoon the plate with fried noodles. The stranger laughed. The arrogance and the cloud of hate that trailed behind began to rise, and fill the room with its invisible aura. He looked left, right, looked back at Miguel and Anthony sitting at the table. At this point Miguel had turned around to watch the stranger again, so the two of them were now transfixed at the scene. The stranger's smile turned sharply into a grimace. He spun back to face Manong, lifted his hand out of the plate of noodles, and flicked them at Manong's face. "Fuck. You can't get the hint, can you? I don't know how you got into this country. But you know what, old man?" The stranger turns around to face Anthony and Miguel, "And this goes for you two pricks as well." The stranger turns back to face Manong. "Stop serving this slop and go back to your fucking country, you mother fucking." And with that last word the stranger grabbed hold of another fistful of noodles and smeared them over Manong's face. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 4 seconds, he continued to smear. He pulled back his hand, turned around, gave a grim smile to Anthony and Miguel, who were now standing up. Faces full of shock, anger, fear, desperation, anxiety, sadness, a mixture of emotions that kept them frozen in place. Fight or flight, both actions were being cancelled out with too many thoughts, too many countering emotions, too many what-if scenarios floating in their heads. The stranger glared at Anthony and Miguel. "This is what we do to your kind. You're not welcome here no more." The stranger turns around and begins to punch Manong in the face with the same noodle-smeared hands. That was all Miguel could handle. Anthony stood there still in shock, but Miguel rushed over to the stranger and tried to wrestle his punching arm back to stop the barrage of fists landing on Manong's face. "Get the fuck off him, you prick. Why you gotta go and hit an old man for, you fucking piece of shit?" The stranger had size over Miguel, though Miguel was able to hold back his punches. His other arm was free and strong enough to elbow Miguel hard in the ribs, which made Miguel immediately let go. "You all are everywhere, like goddamn roaches," he spat at Miguel. Miguel, furious, took a deep breath and launched himself at the stranger. With no real experience in fighting, all he could do was grab hold of the stranger with a bear hug to the waist, which was unfortunate for Miguel, as with the stranger's reach, he was able to pummel him with both arms. Elbows to the back. Punches to the ribs. Miguel held on tighter, frustrated, in pain, tears rolling down his face while the stranger continued his barrage of elbows, punches, and insults. Anthony stood frozen, mouth gaped, shock and fear rooting him in place. "You fucking pieces of shit, take every goddamn street and store in our country, take every fucking business, and all you do is ruin things for everyone." The stranger continued to beat down, Miguel's strength fading, his grip on the stranger loosening as he took multiple punches to the ribs and back. "You come here with your shit food, your shit way of life, ruining my country. First you bring drugs, then you bring the fucking virus, then you take all our fucking money living off our welfare system. I should call immigration on the lot of you. You got papers, boy?" Miguel dropped to his knees. Hurt both physically from barrage of punches and elbows, and hurt emotionally from the insults and the slurs that were flung with every hit. "If you won't go back to where you came from, I'll kick you out myself," the stranger smiled. B balled his hand into one giant fist and raised it high over his head, while his other hand grabbed hold of Miguel's hair, holding him steady for the final blow. Both Miguel and Anthony saw the fist raised. They both knew what was coming, but neither could stop it. Miguel was too weak from the beating and Anthony was still too frozen with fear to move. They both thought of Titaneng in the hospital. Miguel was next. He'll be in the hospital at St. Joseph's with her, that is if he survives the final blow. At this point, Miguel began to experience what most would describe as the slow motion of the last moments of life. Or at least what he thought would be his last moments. They were filled with dread and fear. He could feel the hatred pouring out of the stranger. How could anyone have so much anger and hatred towards anybody? The aura of hate filled the room and engulfed him entirely. He felt as if his entire being was becoming smothered and about to be wiped out. He could feel all that hateful energy wrap him like a thick heavy net, and the anger collecting into a single point in the stranger's fist. All that hate bottled up in one fist would be crashing down on him soon. Miguel passed out from exhaustion. Anthony fainted from shock. And then a darker energy entered the room. Originally it was just the stranger and his anger filling up the space. But then, something else emerged. It was darker than black. It was primal. It was old. And it was hungry. Miguel and Anthony woke up both groggy, unaware of what was going on. It took a few seconds for them to regain their senses. They both assumed they had blacked out, but how? They sit back. Miguel's ribs and body ached. Luckily the stranger had only been hitting him in the back and ribs, and not the face. Wait a minute, he thought. The stranger must have hit him in the head, otherwise why would he have blacked out? But then it occurred to him that his head wasn't hurting. He did have a headache, but not from a punch to the head. More of a groggy, hung-over feeling headache, the type one gets from sleeping in a strange position and getting a stiff neck. Anthony opens his eyes. How did I black out, he thought. Did the stranger go after me after finishing off Miguel? He felt no pain in his body, nothing hurt but his head, but it was the same groggy stiff-necked pain that Miguel was experiencing. Bro, what the fuck happened? Miguel asked. Pear, I don't know, Pear. Fuck. My head hurts. All I remember was I thought I was done for. I remember thinking that I was either going to see Titaneng in the hospital or see my dad up in heaven. Bro, I'm sorry I couldn't step in, I tried, I wanted to, fuck I don't know, I'm so sorry bro. It's alright Pear. Okay Lang, we're both okay, somewhat. I dunno. Dude, where are we? They both looked around. There were green-tiled walls with posters of San Miguel beer, one wall with corner-to-corner mirror to make the place look bigger, foldable picnic tables draped with thick clear plastic, a TV playing local community news, this time playing the morning weather and traffic report. Hazy sunlight was shining through the tinted glass windows of the front of the restaurant. They were at Robinson's. Manong was in front of the kitchen counter with a mop and bucket cleaning the floor. His face, blank, stoic, emotionless. He swished the mop with strong, wide strokes, and when he wrung the mop into the bucket, his sinewy arms tightened into coils of hard leather. For an old man, he moved like a teenager, albeit slow and methodical. Manong, Miguel asked. Okay Lang Ko? Anong nangyari ka Gabe? Where did that asshole go? Silence. Manong did one last swish of the mop into the bucket and wheeled them both back behind the counter and into the kitchen. Miguel and Anthony just looked at each other, confused, baffled, and stiff. Dude, Anthony grimaced like what the hell happened last night? I don't know, but I feel like shit right now. Do you think we should go to the police? Anthony sat in silence, not knowing what to say or do. As he became more and more awake, the memories of the night before became more and more clear, but the gap between now and the moment the stranger was about to hit Miguel in the face was a huge black hole. Dude, what time is it? Miguel asked. Anthony looked at his phone. 6 am. Alright. Okay, so we got 6 hours before clocking in to figure out what we were going to do. Or figure out what happened last night, bro. The kitchen door swung open and Manong walked out with a big tray of food for the carinderia counter. Face emotionless as ever, not even showing signs of strain as he lifted the tray into the heating spot of the counter. After placing the tray in its slot, he turned around to the whiteboard menu above the kitchen counter and began wiping the old menu out and replacing it with the days and evenings options. Meal A. Bistake and rice plus 1 lumpia. Meal B. Pancit canton with beef slices. Meal C. Pork adobo and rice. Special. Lechon kawali. Glossary of terms. Tang ina, short for putang ina. Motherfucker. Pre, short for pair. Colloquial term for bro. Bra, another term for bro evolved from the word brad, brad, or brother. Manong, a term reserved for an older male person. Typically males, family, or strangers would be referred to as uncle or tito. Manong is an older tito.
Day 212. The solitary crack in the cold tile beneath my bed, once a solitary mark in this prison, now feels like a steady companion. A witness to 212 days of unrelenting torment. Each morning, his voice pierces the silence with a chilling "Good morning, my pet," and each night, his command to not fight it is the last thing I hear before I sleep. I etch another tally mark into the gray brick, a daily attempt to anchor myself in an old reality that's slipping away. Clad in the uniform gray scrubs, carefully folded on the metal chair, I await the inevitable opening of the door, to start another day of my suffering. The first 20 days were a descent into isolation, food delivered in the form of a small raw protein bar through a slot in the door. Hope dwindled with each passing moment, until the sight of another woman wearing gray scrubs brought a flicker of hope. But the red band wrapped around her arm served as a grim reminder she was not an ally but a pawn in this twisted game. Like a predator, she dragged me through corridor by my hair to rooms of horror. Waterboarding, bone-crushing blows, and the haunting echoes of screams became my daily existence. Slowly breaking me until I was just as he wanted me, a docile doll in his doll house. And always, the voice, his voice, a teaser of the agony yet to come. In the depths of my pain, a true beacon of hope emerged, a girl I named in my head, Jane, a fellow prisoner filled with fire and defiance. Our unspoken bond became a lifeline, something to hold on to as we endured the torture, our eyes meeting once and making a silent pact to defy our captor and reclaim our freedom. It was the memory of the glass room that fueled our escape plan, a 2-story room I caught a quick glimpse of just a few times on my way to meals. Hidden behind a steel door was my lighthouse in the middle of roaring waves of pain and loneliness. A way out of his sick and twisted dollhouse. 2 stories high, with floor-to-ceiling glass, it taunted us with the possibility of escape as we drowned in the dark waters of this twisted game, sinking deeper every day. As the months passed,